In this video, I'm going to show you a few techniques and exercises I use when I start a horse at liberty. Most of the exercises I use, I start on the halter and line, just to make it a little easier for the horse. It gives them a little bit more direction. I'm using a rope halter just with a regular lead rope, and I have a dressage whip, but I also use lunge whips and carriage whips. I'll start with desensitizing them to the lunge whip, because if they're nervous around the lunge whip, you won't be able to get much done. They'll be too worried and focused on that. The whip should just be used as an extension of your arm to help them, not really to make any physical harmful contact. So if I have a nervous horse like this guy, I'm just going to keep it on him and wait until he relaxes. He's doing some licking and chewing, so I'll release it there. He still is getting nervous around it, so I actually worked with him on this a little bit more than what the video shows, just because I wanted him to be relaxed with the equipment I was using before I started doing any real work with him. There's a few things I want these horses to be able to do before I get into the actual exercises. I want them to be able to yield their hindquarters, which I'll cue by crouching towards their hind end and using my lead rope to lift up a little bit, and if I have to, tapping with my dressage whip on their hind end a little bit. I am showing a mix of both horses in this video. Lynx the Gray Mustang, who has had Liberty training, and Oscar the Bay, who hasn't had any Liberty training at all. This is my first time working with them. The next thing I want them to be able to do is flexion. I just show it really quick here. I usually just throw the lead rope over their back just to make it easier for me, but I'll pick a point and I'll hold that pressure constant until they find that release on their own by tipping their nose in. Once they find that release on their own, they get a total release. And I do everything equally on both sides, but just for the sake of time, I'm just going to show everything kind of a little mixed up. I also want them to be able to back without me having to make any contact with them. So I want to ideally just be able to walk towards them or even just lean forward and have them back up. So I'll sequence my cues here by using a combination of my lead rope, the dressage whip, and clicking. The first Liberty exercise I do with them I call advanced leading, and I want them to take off right when I do and halt at that sweet spot. And by that sweet spot, you can pick your own spot. I usually like to have my shoulder to their ear or my shoulder to the middle of their neck or somewhere like that. But you always want to make that the most comfortable spot for them to be. I don't want to have to be using my whip at all. I want there to be slack in my lead rope. For speed adjustment, I want to be able to increase my own speed and have my horse pick up their speed right away too. Now right here in the takeoff with Oscar, I take off a few steps, give him a few seconds to think. He doesn't take off right away, so I use my whip to tap him. And right there, I'm working on some speed adjustment with him. He's slowing down nice when I do. He doesn't speed up right away when I do, so I remind him and he comes up and then he gets a big release once he reaches that sweet spot. So his release right there is when he catches up to me, he's going to get to slow down. This exercise branches off the last one. I incorporate turns into it to tell how connected your horse is to you. The first one is just a gentle turn. You just lead and then change your path a little bit, and you still want your horse to stay at that shoulder. Make sure you have their attention. The next kind of turn is kind of a backtrack, so I took a step back there and just did almost a 90-degree turn. And I like to keep slack in the lead rope, but if you have to at the start, you can use the lead to remind them a little bit where they have to be. This is the last type of turn. I do it at the halt, and they don't have to fully move their body, but they have to give some sort of indication that they're paying attention to you. They either have to turn their head, or you can just see in their eye. Both of these horses fully move their body, which is great, but they don't have to give you that much. Just some sort of indication that they're paying attention to you still. These next exercises I call the 4 draws. The first one, I just start against a fence line. and I'll start walking backwards and raise my whip up, and as they start walking towards me and approaching me, I'll lower it, and just as they reach that sweet spot, the whip will touch the ground. Luckily with these guys, neither of them try to barrel past me. They both stop pretty much in that good sweet spot, but if one of them were to barrel past me, I would back them up. I would start walking backwards again and try to draw them back up to that shoulder and make sure they're relaxed through it. This next draw is very similar to the last, except I'm going to do it off the rail and on a circle, but I'm going to back up and draw that horse into that shoulder that it's already on. You can do all of these next 3 draw exercises either on the rail or off the rail. Sometimes it helps your horse if you do them on the rail first because it gives them one less answer to give. So I just back up and bring that horse into that shoulder opposite from the whip. This is the next type of draw. So my horse is going to be on the circle and I'm going to back up, but this time bring my whip underneath the lead rope and up along the other horse's side and lower it as he reaches that shoulder. So it's just essentially changing the direction, changing the shoulder that the horse is at, so the whip will go underneath him, up high again so it's parallel to his body, and then lower it as he's reaching that shoulder. This is the last draw. This is the reverse switch. I walk towards the tail and turn towards the outside and face my horse again. This is the only time that the horse draws to the same side that the whip is on. So I come back towards the tail, I open up my arm, I keep my lead rope and my whip in the same hands just because later on it'll make it easier when you're trying to do multiple maneuvers or work your horse off the line. I usually don't switch the hand that my whip is in, so it's just good to practice it now. The first time that I take the halter and the lead off, I'll just be doing that first drawing exercise right up against the fence. I'll start practicing all of those on the line exercises at Liberty too, little by little. And I'm just hoping to get the same result that I get on the line. I just want him to stop at that sweet spot, and once he reaches that spot, I'll lower the whip and release all pressure, give him a big reward. For me, Liberty isn't so much your horse just following you and you being a treat dispenser and your horse just doing what you want him or her to do. It's more teamwork and that you're 2 magnets that can't get away from each other and the connection is so strong that that horse just doesn't want to leave your side. And there's 2 big parts to Liberty. You want to be able to draw them in and push them away. These exercises focus on the draw because it's most important to have the draw first. You need to make sure they're able to come into you and not be afraid of you and be able to listen when you're in a big space. Most of these exercises are simple, but you need your horse to be confident in them, which means you need to be confident doing them. That means showing your horse where you want him to be, giving him a lot of releases and rewards, because horses learn from the release, not the pressure. So the more releases you can give, the better and the quicker that they're going to learn. The stronger you can create that magnetic draw, the easier it's going to be when you get into an open space and try to work your horse at Liberty. Once you're able to do all of these individual exercises, you can make it a little bit more difficult and put it in a sequence together or start practicing some of them off the line. When you do go off the line the first time, try to be in a round pen or a small area, because if your horse does get away, you want to be able to get them back quickly. Usually when you do it in a small area, it'll give them a little bit more confidence too. They'll have less answers they can give. These are just a few of the exercises I use when I start working a horse towards Liberty. These may seem pretty simple, but these are the basic building blocks to everything, so once you have these down, all of the other Liberty exercises are going to come a lot easier and smoother and quicker. These are just the most basic starting ones I'd use to start Liberty training.